Hey YouTube, welcome to the Bubba Continua. I believe it's December 7th, a day that will live in infamy. Well, I don't know, maybe not always. It's a pretty good day for me. 2020 keeps paying off. It keeps working out to be a wonderful year. It just gets better and better. I feel so strange saying that because there's people out there beating their heads on steering wheels, cursing the year out as though it were a person. But it's been going really well for me. I have had some setbacks. My macaroni and cheese recipe, it's kind of in turmoil right now. I make a wonderful macaroni and cheese that's baked, and made this stuff for years, and people beg for it and cry and moan, and it really is good. But I made it the other day, and I thought to myself, this stuff really needs to be creamy instead of, when you bake macaroni and cheese, the cheese kind of tenses up. And it's pleasing in its own way, but there's nothing like creamy macaroni and cheese, where it's like fettuccine alfredo, except it's macaroni and cheese. And so I started changing the recipe around, trying to fix it. I think my problem is that, once again, it can be traced back, like many of my cooking problems, to Alton Brown. I don't know why I ever listened to this guy, because when I put my recipe together for the first time, I didn't know how to make macaroni and cheese, and I looked at several different recipes and put different things together from different recipes, and his was one of them. And I'm not sure he knows how to make macaroni and cheese. I mean, I've seen him make some things on video, and you can just tell by the way he makes them. There's just no doubt that they're bad. There's no question about it. And you can't really get people to be honest about it when they try these recipes, because if they like Alton Brown, they automatically say it was wonderful, even if it tasted awful. So you have to make it yourself and try to make the best of it. So I did come up with a recipe that was really good, but it wasn't creamy, smooth macaroni and cheese. It was the baked kind. And so I've been trying to find out how to make creamy macaroni and cheese. So I've made macaroni and cheese like at least twice a week for quite some time now. I've probably got 6 pounds of cheese in my refrigerator. It's a wonder my digestion hasn't locked up permanently. There's only so much cheese your digestive tract can handle. And I've learned some interesting stuff. I've learned that sodium citrate, if you put like a quarter of a teaspoon of sodium citrate in 2 quarts of macaroni and cheese, that it loosens the cheese up and prevents it from separating. Prevents the protein and the fat from separating, which is what causes cheese to no longer be creamy. And I've tried a number of different things. It seems like adding 1 egg yolk to the cheese sauce is really helpful. Martha Stewart says white cheddar is the way to go. She says white cheddar is better than orange. Now, I don't know why. I know cheddar is not naturally orange. They put something called annatto in it to turn it orange, and maybe that makes it stringy. I mean, maybe that prevents it from melting well. I don't know the answer. So I'm just working all the time trying to fix my macaroni and cheese recipe. Today I bought pepper jack cheese, which is similar to cheddar, and it's white. And I also bought sharp white cheddar cheese, and I'm going to see if Martha Stewart knows anything. So that's like the worst thing that's happened to me lately, is having my whole macaroni and cheese paradigm overturned. But other than that, things are going really, really well. It's just a wonderful year. It's a wonderful year. I wish everyone could say that. Ryan Reynolds, the actor, I didn't know this because I don't watch Marvel movies because they're full of occult stuff. So I thought to myself, why would I want that stuff in my mind? I mean, I'm not 12 years old, and I know that stuff's an insult to God. So why should I watch it? So I quit. But I have watched Marvel stuff in the past. I watched the first Deadpool, which I should not have watched. It was full of nudity and disgusting humor. Nothing that was helpful. So I did watch the first Deadpool, and I've seen Ryan Reynolds acting in other things. I remember the first time I saw him, he was in one of the Blade movies. And I thought, boy, this guy is really a good actor. Why isn't he famous? Because no one really knew who he was back then. He was pretty obscure. He'd done like a National Lampoon movie or something, which I didn't see. But anyway, I saw him in the Blade movies, and then I saw him in a couple of 1 or 2 X-Men movies, something like that. And he did a few other things. Anyway, he's really hot these days in Hollywood, I think. And he seems to be one of the devil's favored people. Some people get favor from Satan to do really well. to have an outsized influence on our culture. And it looks like he's one of those guys right now. It seems like everything he touches turns to gold, which wasn't always the story. You know, I don't know if you remember the Green Lantern. So he has his own channel now on YouTube, and he's huge. And either he has his own production company, or maybe a movie studio is doing this for him, and you know, he just stars in it. I don't know, or he's just the face of the production company. I don't know the answer, but he's got these comedy videos that he puts up, and I've only seen 2 of them. So what they've done is they've done sort of a parody of When Harry Met Sally, which is a movie about 2 miserable people who get together and get married. The way these things work, the Ryan Reynolds movies, is 2020 is a person. It's this little nice looking young woman who's maybe 5'2", this little tiny lady, maybe pushing 30. The biological clock is ticking and so forth. She's out there swiping back and forth trying to find a man, and she hooks up with Satan, who is also on Tinder for some reason. And Satan is, I don't know if you've seen the movie Legend, obviously, because I don't know who's watching this, but the movie Legend with Tom Cruise a long time ago was a little weird. Tom Cruise was sort of a grown elf in this magical kingdom, in a place where unicorns were very important for some reason. And the devil was played by Tim Curry. And instead of calling him the devil, they called him Darkness, and he lived in this hole in the ground with a bunch of nasty-looking demons, I guess. Goblins, I think they called them. So Darkness was this huge, huge being, including his horns and all that, you know, maybe 10 feet high. And he was, I'm sure you've seen this, he's completely red, he's got this gigantic plastic chin, creepy yellow eyes, huge black horns, and he looks really muscular. And Tim Curry's, you know, kind of a scrawny guy, so apparently they had to glue rubber muscles to him to make him look impressive. And they put hooves on him and all that. The movie's not really that great, but his work as Darkness was, you know, it was neat, if you like that kind of thing. It was well done. So he appears, not Tim Curry, but another actor who's a 6'7" bodybuilder. I actually looked this up. This bodybuilder who didn't need the rubber muscles plays Darkness in the Ryan Reynolds video. I find this really interesting because there's a lady named Mary Baxter, and she says that Jesus took her to hell and took her on a tour of hell over a period of days. And when people asked her what Satan looked like, she said he looked a lot like Darkness from the movie Legend. Well, you can figure out what the video's like. I mean, Darkness and 2020 find each other, and it's love at first sight. And they do all sorts of things together and enjoy themselves while making everybody else around them utterly miserable. So the idea is that 2020 is this evil, terrible year, which is somehow has a mind and a face and a body, and the devil's in love with 2020. And the thing that occurred to me when I watched this was, why do people think things are going to get better on January the 1st? Well, where did that idea come from? Where do people get the idea that it's the year that's cursed and not just the times, you know? I think people keep saying, when is 2020 going to be over? I don't think they understand that's not how it works. Things don't have to get better on January the 1st. There's no reason why they should. So it's strange to be having such a good year while other people are in this sort of psychotic state of anger, like self-righteous anger. Why did this happen to us? We're so great. We're so wonderful. We're so nice, so progressive. How did this happen to us when we're doing everything right? Very strange. Now that I'm done talking about my macaroni and cheese exploits, which are really not that important, I want to talk about the reason I wanted to make this video in the first place, because it's been just an excellent week for me. And maybe if I can share the things that have happened to me, these are things that have happened in my relationship with God. Maybe if I share them with you, they'll happen to you. That's what I hope. I keep waking up in the middle of the night, and when I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm not an anxious person. I have a little bit of anxiety, a tiny bit of anxiety and worry sometimes, very little, almost none. So basically, I used to be a person who worried a lot, whether I wanted to or not. I hated worry, but I couldn't stop. So I'm not like that anymore. Every once in a while, I have a little tiny bit of worry, but that's about it. So I don't know why I wake up in the middle of the night. It's not like I wake up worried about things. But I have this feeling that God wakes me up because it's when He can get to me when I'm alone, Or maybe it's not God. Maybe it's spirits that are against me wake me up thinking that I'm vulnerable at that time. Because I know spirits that are against God like to be really active between midnight and say 6 a.m. That's when they really like to party. So it could be that they're coming to challenge me or something, which seems like a waste of time because when I was a kid, I was really afraid of evil and I was afraid of spirits and so forth. I knew they existed, and those times are gone. You can't push somebody around forever. Not when he knows who he is in Christ. I don't know, but I keep waking up, and I keep having weird dreams, and I'm trying to think what this dream was about. I had a dream that really seemed important. Well, I don't know. Maybe it'll come back to me. Oh, I do remember what it was. I used to write for Tropic Magazine, which was the Sunday magazine of the Miami Herald, and they won a lot of prizes. Dave Barry was their staff humorist, which is kind of unfortunate for me because I was a humorist, and I showed up and I made a big impression on him with my writing. But there was Dave Barry, so it wasn't like they were in a humor drought, and they were gonna push my career all that hard. But they printed a lot of stuff that I wrote. And they were very enthusiastic about my writing. I mean, they were always eager to print it. So it's not like they ignored me. During that time, I got to know some of these people a little bit. I mean, I went to the editor. One of the editors, he built a deck on his house. And he invited a bunch of the writers and other people that worked for the magazine, and I was invited to that. And I mean, I was friendly with them and so forth. But I never really felt that I could connect with these people. And it wasn't so much like the art people, though I kind of got along well with them, because they weren't really the same kind of person. I think it was mainly just the writers and editors because they typically came from a journalistic background, and they were kind of hard. They were kind of hard, cold, competitive people. I mean, I don't mean they weren't polite or anything, but they were kind of hard and competitive and cold. And Dave Barry was not like that. I'm not saying I'm like Dave Barry's buddy. I just knew him well enough to say hi in the hallway or something like that. I remember talking to him at this deck party, and his son was like 7 years old and was taking karate, and he wanted to demonstrate, so he was standing there punching me in the leg while I was trying to talk to his dad. Anyway, Dave Barry seemed to kind of float above the anger and the competitive nature and all that. And I think that was because he was famous and rich, and he was not a journalist. And, he really didn't have anybody to fear at that magazine. So I tried to fit in there. I thought I was going to make it as a humorist, and wrote a number of things for him. But I never really felt that I fit in. I just never felt that I could fit in. And I felt like, I don't know if you've ever tried to date someone, and both of you tried to make something happen, and it just seemed like it should happen, but it didn't. And eventually you ended up in this relationship where both of you were kind of afraid to say this isn't working out. And I just felt that way with me while I was working there. I started going to church while I was there, went to a charismatic church, started praying in tongues, had supernatural experiences. And you couldn't relate these things, you couldn't tell these things to these guys. There's no way they would have understood any of that. So I just started drifting farther and farther away from him. And there was a guy named Tom who was an editor there. He was one I worked with most of the time. And I remember the last thing he said to me was, "Don't disappear," because he sensed it. And I did disappear. I disappeared right after that. So in my dream, I was in Miami. The Miami Herald used to have a huge, very, very expensive office building on the water. That was before all the newspapers, started going out of business slowly. They're withering. So they had to get rid of the building. They couldn't afford it. Now they're out. I think they're out in the woods in Broward County, someplace, the next county north. I've seen the building. It's a small building compared to the one they used to have. They don't have anything like the budget they used to have. It's just drying up. But anyway, back in the day, they had this nice building on the water next to DuPont Plaza, which was a fancy hotel back then. Did I say next to? I meant near. So we were having lunch, but we're not eating anywhere near DuPont Plaza, near the Miami Herald. We're like 2 miles, 3 miles north on the other side of I-95. And we're eating outdoors at some kind of a concrete picnic table, and there's other people at the table with us. And we're eating some kind of fast food. I've got a can, some kind of beverage. And Tom is there, and he's talking to me. I can tell he wants me to come back and work for the magazine. He wants me to do more stuff for him. And I'm basically saying, I don't mind doing little things for you here and there. That's all right. I really wasn't interested in advancement or trying to make a career out of it or anything like that. I was just thinking, well, I'll just do this for them because they were nice to me. I want to be helpful. And the people around me were all Christians and conservatives, everybody except Tom. And they started talking, and we started talking about why he was having lunch so far from where he worked. And they were saying, the people around me were saying, well, it's because we're conservatives. And I got up to move my trash. I had this beverage can in my hand. I was going to get rid of it, and I said, and because we're Christians. And then I woke up. And when I woke up, all the stuff came back to me. I started thinking about all the times that back then I was really excited about working for this magazine because they said my work was brilliant. That was how nice they were to me, and so I knew that I had at least one outlet where I could keep writing, and I thought it would lead to better things, bigger things. But it never worked out. I had that, and I also had 2 comic strips in development with a syndicate editor, and they didn't work out. And I knew that my work was good. That was the thing that was one of the things that was annoying about it. I knew my work was very good. There's very few people that write humor well. There's almost nobody still today. There's plenty of people that can do it for television and movies, but putting it on the page for people to read, very few people do that well. Almost none. So I always thought, surely something's going to happen if I'm doing work this well and I produce it this reliably and this quickly, and I'm easy to work with. If you can just count on me to produce on demand, surely something good's got to happen sooner or later. And it didn't. I got a few things printed in other magazines, and I had some cartoons published and so forth. That was about it. Now, later in life, I got 3 books published, but they didn't really go anywhere. So I thought about this. I was lying in bed after I woke up, and I was thinking about all the time that I had wasted pursuing this ridiculous dream. Because wanting to be a print humorist is not really, it's not a good goal for a Christian. It's not a very important kind of writing. It tends to be destructive. There's a lot of temptation involved in humor. It's easy to get drawn over into shock and cruelty. So it's just not a good idea. It's not what I should have been doing. Regardless of how good I was at it, it didn't make any difference. And I didn't understand that. And I didn't understand that the reason I couldn't connect with these people was because they were children of darkness and I was a child of light. They didn't know God. I knew him a little bit. And the Bible says, what does darkness have to do with light? It says you shouldn't be unequally yoked. You shouldn't be. A lot of people think that's only about marriage, but it's not. It's about everything. You shouldn't have a business partner who's not a Christian. You shouldn't have a best friend who's not a Christian. I'm sorry to tell you that, but it's the truth. You should limit the participation of the non-Christians have in your life. Because it just has no future. Think about it. These people are not going to be around 1,000 years from now. They're going to be someplace completely different, and you're never going to see them again. And all the stuff that you've invested in them, it's going to come to nothing. And during that time, you could have been investing in people that you would have with you forever, in an environment of complete love and righteousness, and power and perfection. So I didn't understand that. And I was lying in bed thinking about this and thinking about how I wasted all this time chasing this ridiculous dream that was never going to go anywhere. It was never about talent. It was never about my ability to produce the work. It didn't matter. I could have been the most talented person who ever lived. I still was not going to get anywhere because I was trying to make it in the kingdom of darkness, not in the kingdom of light. And I was lying there thinking about that and feeling bad about it. And I just got this revelation, is the strangest thing about God is he can tell you something you already know that you've known for, oh, my vacuum cleaner's making noises. He can tell you things that you've known for years and that you tell other people. And yet when he tells them to you through revelation, they become more real. And you know them on a deeper level. They become part of you. So that's what happened to me. And the revelation he gave me was that I really was his son. And that he's not reluctant to do things for me. He doesn't feel like I'm imposing when I ask him to do stuff for me. He's not even just eager to do things for me. He demands it. He insists on it. He does not like it when we try to do things for ourselves. People say God helps those who help themselves. Barack Obama, I think it was, claimed that was in the Bible because Barack Obama is not a Christian and knows nothing about God. It's not in the Bible anywhere. What the Bible says is you have to let God help you. You can't rely on the strength of your own hand. And over and over and over in the Bible, people and spirits, Satan himself, they get in trouble for trying to make things work outside of God's plan without using God's power. And if you, I don't want to sit here and go through the whole Bible, but Adam and Eve wanted to be wise so they would be better. And so they took this drug, this fruit that Satan gave them, thinking it would be helpful, and the entire human race was cursed after that. We're cursed today because of that. Saul was cursed for trying to perform a sacrifice. Moses was cursed because he did something God told him to do in the wrong way. He was supposed to speak to a rock and make water come out of it, and instead he struck it with a staff. I think it was Aaron's sons, I'm not sure, a couple of priests were killed because they didn't use the fire that they were supposed to use on the altar. They brought strange fire. Strange fire, it means pride. That's all it means. Anything that comes from outside of God's kingdom. It's a metaphor. It's what I'm talking about here. When you try to do things in your own strength, with your own intelligence and so forth, trying to make things better, trying to serve God, but you do it, you do something God has no interest in, and you do it without his help. That's strange fire. Who else did things like that? Well, you can think of the Jews of Jesus' time. They had all sorts of ideas that came from human beings, not from God, and Jesus complained because they taught them as doctrine. They taught man's traditions as doctrine. That's strange fire. That's why so many Jews never received salvation. Couldn't find out who the Messiah was, even though he was standing right in front of them. So what I got was this powerful internal knowledge that God really is my Father, and that it's like there's a pipeline it's like I can feel a pipeline extending from me to him, like a wormhole from science fiction movies, and I can speak into it, and he will bring the things that I ask, because that's his plan. That's how he wants things done. That's what he insists on. And it's just been so helpful. I can't tell you how helpful it's been. I feel so much warmer, so much more relaxed. I had problems where I had to I had to fight irritability sometimes, and I would get angry with people. I didn't want to be angry, but it was a habit that I got myself into. If you do something often enough, you lose your free will, and by the time you're my age, there's a lot of things you can't stop doing, and you can only stop with God's help. So he's just helped me tremendously with a lot of things. I can't tell you how much better I feel over the last couple of days. It's spectacular. It's something I wanted for so long, because there were these two occasions when I was young when Jesus visited me, and I felt his peace and his love radiating, pouring through me. God is radioactive. He radiates. He radiates love and peace and joy and blessings. They just come off of him like radiation leaves the sun, and they go through you if you're close to him. And I knew what that was like, and I wanted that all the time. I knew that I was supposed to live that way. So it's been so helpful. So I hope you'll ask God for that. And remember, you're not supposed to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. You're not supposed to try to impress God with your hard work and your suffering. God has no interest in that. He has no interest in your pride. God showed me a lot of stuff. Maybe this will be a long video. One of the problems that we have is that we look at people in the Bible and we think we're supposed to do everything they did, and that all the things they did were right because they were so close to God. They're these big famous people, and we're nothing. And Paul is an example of that. We tend to look at Paul, and we think he's someone that we're supposed to emulate. And that's not true. There's only one person we're supposed to emulate, and that's Jesus Christ. No one else. Not Paul, not Peter, nobody. Paul made mistakes. Elijah made mistakes. Elijah ridiculed the prophets of Baal, and right after that, he was in this situation where he was secure and he was safe and he was on top of things, and Jezebel and Ahab were beneath him, and then he ridiculed the prophets of Baal and made fun of them, and the first thing you know, he was running from this woman. No man should run from a woman in the kingdom of heaven. It's just not the way things are supposed to work. That's out of order. Well, Paul defied the Holy Spirit. That's why he got arrested. He was told that if he went to Rome or Jerusalem, he was going to be tied up and he was going to be taken where somebody, he was going to be taken away. And Paul said something very proud about how he was willing to suffer anything for God, and he didn't care. So he went to Jerusalem, and sure enough, he was arrested. And what did he do when he got arrested? Did God solve his problem? Think about what happened to Jesus. When people went after him, God helped him. Like they tried to stone him, they tried to throw him off the cliffs at Nazareth, and he just disappeared through the crowd. He just walked off. He didn't have to do what Paul did. Paul got scared and he called for the emperor. He called on the government. Now remember, the government belongs to Satan. One of the big differences between the Antichrist and Jesus is that Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world." The Antichrist will be a religious and political leader. Jesus will be a political leader when he returns and rules in the Messianic age, but until then, no, he's not a political leader. And when you call on your government for help, you're not reaching out to God. So Paul reached out to the Roman government, and that's how he ended up in the trouble that he ended up in. A lot of other bad things happened to Paul. I think twice he was flogged, which is a horrible, unbelievable punishment. And he was stoned until they thought he was dead, which is not very good either. And people look at these things, people love to tell us this is what life is supposed to be like if you're a Christian. Everyone's supposed to spit on you all the time. And you're supposed to suffer and show God how much you love him by suffering. And it's not true. When things go badly for you like that, something's not right in your relationship with God. And you can say, well, Jesus was crucified. Yeah, Jesus had one bad day. And it was his will. He was never captured. Nothing happened to him that he did not permit. When they first approached him to take him away, first of all, he went to them. He turned himself in. Second, when they approached him, he knocked them all down with supernatural power. You can read it. The people that were approaching to take him, he knocked them all back down on the ground and showed them he was God, and they took him anyway. They got back up and took him. And he didn't have to go with them. So Jesus had one bad day in his life, and it was all according to his will. He saw it coming. He predicted it. Everything happened on his timetable. That's not how it went with Paul. Paul got thrashed twice and stoned once. Paul himself admitted that he had a problem with pride. He said that God gave him a thorn in the flesh, and he wouldn't take it away because he didn't want Paul to be overly exalted. Now, I'm not trying to pick on Paul. What I'm trying to tell you is when things go badly in your life consistently, it doesn't make you a good Christian. It doesn't mean you're doing things right. God should be helping you all the time. He should be giving you peace and joy, and you shouldn't be entangled with people who mistreat you and abuse you. I mean, obviously you're going to run into them from time to time, but it shouldn't be a lifestyle. Something's wrong. If you look at the Bible and you see what happened, you can look at the Jews to understand what our lives are supposed to look like. You can look at the Jews in the Old Testament because those things are given to us as lessons. And you'll see that when things went badly for the Jews, it was never because they were doing everything right. It was because they had screwed up. And what did they do? When they were smart, the first thing they did was to go to a prophet or a priest and say, what did we do wrong? And then they would fix it. And when they didn't do that, they had problems. So this stuff is very important to know. You remember what Peter said when he talked about how he would go to his death for Jesus, and he would never deny him, And he said he rebuked Jesus, said you should never be crucified. And Jesus called him Satan. When you lift yourself up like that, as Peter did, and you say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, you're tempting God to chastise you. I've learned I don't like to say things like I'm going to the store. I like to say things like I'm going to the store, God willing, because the Bible cautions against saying I'm going to do this or that. The future is going to work out this way or that way without saying God willing or with God's help, because that's pride. The Bible says God fights the proud and he helps the humble. It says he gives grace to the humble. Grace just means anything God does for you. A lot of people think grace means the ability to sit still and smile while people spit on you, and that's not what it means. Healing is grace, deliverance is grace, miracles are grace, supernatural knowledge is grace. All those things are grace. Salvation is grace. It just means gifts, things that are given to you that you don't deserve. We're supposed to be heirs. The Bible says the wages of sin is death, meaning you earn hell, you earn death and hell. That's the things that you earn with your own strength and your own righteousness. But it says we are heirs of righteousness. We are heirs. What do heirs do? Nothing. They just belong to the correct family, and things are given to them. And that's the way life is supposed to be like. Each generation is supposed to be better off than the one before. If we all had to earn everything that we get, we'd still be in the Stone Age. No knowledge would be passed on, no wealth. You're supposed to receive. You're not supposed to be a self-made man. Every self-made man who has ever died is in hell right now. That's where self-made people go. Pride is poisonous. It's terrible. So I just wanted to share that revelation because it's so beautiful. It's so powerful. And the other thing I wanted to say is God showed me, the other day he told me that the destination is the process, or the process is the destination. You can't get caught up on your imperfection and the problems that you have and say, well, I'm not going to be a good Christian, because you're probably never going to be a perfect Christian in this life. But what you can do is stay on the path. If you're on the path, then you're fine. That's good enough. The Bible says that you may fall, but you will not be utterly cast down, but God upholds you with his hand. So you shouldn't be overly concerned with the stumbling, as long as you're on the right path, as long as you're trying to get there and you're doing it the right way. So he showed me that, and he showed me some things about revelation. About rapture. I always say revelation when I want to say rapture. I keep feeling like the rapture is just about upon us. And one of the things God has shown me, which kind of relates to the thing about the destination and the process, is that people are mistaken when they think that the rapture is an event. People think that what's going to happen is people who have raised their hand once in church and said, oh Jesus, I want to be saved, forgive me. They think everybody who's done that they're going to be off doing something, and they're just going to disappear and be in heaven. And they're going to be surprised. And that's not the way it works. You're not going to go to heaven just because one day, 40 years ago, you raised your hand in church and asked for salvation. You're not going to be taken in the rapture, I'll put it that way. Because typically, people who believe in that stuff, they believe in once saved, always saved. They treat God like a washing machine. They sin all week, go to church, get clean. Sin all week, go to church, get clean. They say to themselves, I want to do this bad thing or that bad thing, so I'll do that, and then I'll go to the priest and I'll confess, and then I'll be clean again and everything will be all right. Or they just say, well, I'll just do what I want for the rest of my life, and I'll never go to church, I'll never pray, I'll never try to be good, because once saved, always saved. Doesn't matter what I do. People ask a little bit too much, and they have this idea that they're just going to disappear with no warning. And the Bible doesn't say that Jesus isn't going to give us any warning. He said to people, he said that he would come as a thief in the night, but later he said he wouldn't come as a thief in the night to his children. He was talking about people who didn't know him. You should be getting prepared for the rapture, because the rapture is a process. It starts at salvation, and then God will rapture you internally bit by bit. Each person, your body is supposed to be like an embassy. The Bible compares people to buildings and houses, and you're supposed to be an ambassador, and it literally uses the word ambassador. An ambassador is a person who lives in an embassy. An embassy is part of another country. Like the Israeli embassy, I was once invited to wonderful event there. And while I was in that embassy, even though it was in Washington, D.C., I was in Israel because the soil under the embassy was part of Israel. That's the way embassies work. So this is part of heaven. This belongs to heaven. And I'm a citizen of heaven. I'm subject to heaven's laws. I'm not subject to the laws of the earth. I have to obey them for convenience sake to avoid provoking people. But other than that, no. I mean, it's just something I do to kind of humor the government, to humor other people. So you should be transformed bit by bit, day by day, until what's inside you is like what's inside heaven. That should be going on inside you. You should be getting yourself free of spirits that are against God. You should be changing your attitudes. You should be looking at Psalm 32 all the time and reading it and trying to confess to God all your iniquities and sins, trying to be honest with Him. He knows it all. You know, it's funny when you tell God about something evil you've done. I've been in this situation so many times, and I always feel like I'm telling Him something He doesn't know. And of course, He already knew it. It was real before I decided to articulate it. It was already real. It had already happened. He knew about it. The consequences were in place. So just tell Him. Just be honest. You'll find that if you're being raptured continuously during your life, you're going to end up being pulled away from people that you thought were very close to you and very important to you. You're just going to find yourself separated from things you used to like to do. You're going to find you don't want any part of anymore. Things you didn't like to do, you're going to love to do. You're going to love prayer. You're going to love healing and miracles and prophecy and all that stuff. You're going to love reading the Bible, listening to the Bible. I don't listen to secular music anymore. I had this gigantic CD collection, all this jazz stuff, all these blues CDs. Just a mountain of music, and I took it all to the dump. I mean, I just got rid of it. I still have some classical stuff because that seems pretty harmless. I mean, thousands of dollars worth of CDs. Took it to the dump. So you should be raptured bit by bit, continuously, all the time. And those are the people that should expect to go in the event of the rapture. When people do disappear, those should be the people who go, the people who've been prepared. Not the people who don't have oil in their lamps. You got to be filled with the oil. So that was a really remarkable revelation because I never really thought of it that way. So if you're out there and you think, you know, I live with my girlfriend and I smoke weed and go to clubs and do whatever I want with my life and use all sorts of filthy language and I'm proud and if you just live a worldly lifestyle and you think you're going to make it because you go to some money church, because you sit and listen to Creflo Dollar or Kenneth Copeland, you're going to have a really bad day the day after the rapture because the rapture hasn't started for you. The rapture isn't the beginning of a process. It's something that happens long after the process started. It's just proof that the process is going on in you. So, something to think about. I'll tell you what, it's just been such a good week. Day before yesterday, there's this young lady. I used to mentor a young man named Travis Quinn. Met him in church 13 years ago, I guess. And I've told about him before. I tried to help him. He came from I'm going to be honest, kind of a ghetto family. And his mother was a horrible, poisonous influence to him, and everybody around him was a poisonous influence. I know people are going to say I'm a racist, but you know what? I've known a lot of black people. They cause all their own problems. They really do. The crime, the sexual morals. It seems like everybody has to smoke weed all the time. The inclination to violence. I don't know what it is, but there's just this. I've known so many black people who just didn't understand that it wasn't okay to hit people. That you can't say somebody treated me with disrespect, so as it was my duty to hit him. That's a crime. You can't do that. The abuse of the welfare system, it's real. It's real. I'm sorry. You can turn me off and call me a racist. It's 100% real. I mean, I know black conservatives, and they talk to me about it. I know black people. So Travis was raised in this environment, and he was raised around a bunch of poisonous people. They involved him in drugs. They got him to sell drugs. The sex that went on was beyond description by white standards. So he came from a really poisoned background, and I was going back to church and I was trying to get closer to God. And so God put us together. We became prayer partners. And He kept opening our eyes to things that were wrong with us and helping us to love correction and to be changed. And Travis picked up on all this stuff and got himself into college and got a scholarship and started being a leader to others, helping them to clean up their lives. And he was doing so well, and then he was shot accidentally by a friend of his and died a month later. And suddenly the person that I shared more of my Christian life with than anyone else, suddenly he was gone. And I as far as I know, until a couple of days ago, I didn't get to pray with anyone between the time that he died until then. I mean, not in any meaningful way. There are people you can pray with who don't really know what's going on, who don't have any spiritual knowledge, and who don't listen, and they're proud and they think they know everything. So you kind of pray with them on a surface level, superficial level. But with Travis, I could talk about the deep things, and he could talk about the deep things with me, and we would share things and improve each other. And I didn't have anything like that for, he died on May the 10th, I believe. Sometimes I kind of conflate his death with my father's death, which was last year. But no, it was May 10th, I believe. And just had this long drought. Well, when I was at my last church, which is a place called New Dawn Ministries in Miami, the pastor was a guy who turned out to be a rapist, child rapist. And he's in prison now. And there were a lot of problems with that church. People were very proud, and you couldn't tell them anything. You couldn't share any revelation with them. Well, it took me a long time to realize what was going on. I prayed in tongues all the time, and I got revelation, and God said, "This place is not for you," and I got out. They actually kind of drove me out because I spoke the truth. Well, while I was there, a young lady from a Jamaican family, she got a scholarship at the University of Miami. She was there at the same time as Travis. And this young lady is just a remarkable person. She apparently, I don't know exactly what the story is. She had to be raised by her older sister. Her mother was not around. I've never even heard anything about her father. And she just had to take care of herself. You know, her sister helped her out, but she had to look after herself. She graduated from high school, did well. And then she got scholarships. She participated in beauty pageants, which has to be a stressful and strange thing to do. But she found out you could get scholarships that way, so she participated in beauty pageants and got a bunch of scholarships, and she ended up getting a scholarship at the University of Miami. And then after she left the University of Miami, she ended up going to Purdue University online. Everything's online now. Then got her master's degree, and she's got a job, and she's got an apartment. And I always watched this girl. What happened was when she moved to the University of Miami, she was moving from Broward County, which is up north, to Dade County, which is where Miami is. And I lived near the university, and her brother-in-law and sister asked if I could drive her to church. So I drove her to church every week for like a year and a half, 2 years, and we got to know each other a little bit. Although she's kind of quiet, so it's not always you don't always know what's going on in there. But we talked a lot. And I was able to give her a little advice, a few tips here and there, and she did kind of pick up on it. So the other day, she surprised me and sent me an invitation and said, I want you to come to my online graduation. I watched her graduate at Purdue. And it was a very strange event. You know, they were showing pictures of people, like yearbook pictures, and what their degrees were, and that was the graduation, a big series of these things. But I was still a real honor to be asked to this thing, and I enjoyed it because I wanted to go to Travis's graduation. He was supposed to graduate, I suppose it would have been this coming May, and obviously that's never going to happen. So it was nice to see one of the two of them make it. It was nice to be included. Well, I watched that, and I thought, well, that's nice, and I won't hear from her for a long time after this. And then the day before yesterday, she called me early in the morning and asked for my advice about some problems she was having with her landlady. And we talked for a long time, and I talked about all the things that God had done for me to help me to get closer to Him and to have my life improved and to live, higher on the food chain. Christians are supposed to be kings and queens. We're not supposed to be servants. I mean, yeah, we serve, but that doesn't mean we're not royalty. We're not supposed to be under other people's heel. So I gave her a bunch of advice, and she asked if we could pray. And finally, for the first time since May, I got to have a decent prayer session with somebody who knows something about Christianity. And it was just tremendous. Because I have friends, and I talk to them, and I say, we can pray. If you ever want to pray, you want to talk to me about something? And they generally don't take me up on it. It's just, I don't know, maybe they're embarrassed to have prayer sessions. I used to be really embarrassed about it. But it was just wonderful to talk to somebody who was willing to receive this stuff and then to have a prayer session. It was just absolutely fantastic. So I hope I hear from her again in the future. I used to hope that she and Travis would pair up and get married, and it didn't work out. So it'll be nice to see. I think based on how she's done so far and based on her attitude, I think she's going to do really well. Of course, this is, assuming the rapture doesn't come this month. And I'm not assuming that because I keep feeling like it will. Well, I guess I've talked too long, and I've repeated things that I said in other videos. I guess I don't remember everything I said in other videos, and I also want this one to stand on itself, stand on its own 2 feet. So I don't know. Again, what are the things that I would take away from this? One is the rapture is a process, and if it hasn't started in you already, don't expect to go in the actual event. And if you're stuck here during the tribulation, you're really going to regret it because it's a time of agony and torment. You can still be saved, but you'll wish you had done it sooner. That's one thing. And another is you really are, if you're a Christian, you really are a son or daughter of God. You really are, and God really does. He insists on doing things for you. He insists on doing the heavy lifting, and you need to get that revelation, and you need to speak in tongues every day because speaking in tongues brings revelation. I guess that's it. I guess that's all there is. I wish other people, I wish the world weren't full of people who hated this year, who saw it as a curse because it's been such a blessing to me. It's just been tremendous. It has just been tremendous. The reality you live in really depends on whether you're a child of darkness or a child of light, and you can be a child of light. You can make that choice. Whatever happens to you in the future, you may not want to hear this, but it's going to be your fault. You're not going to, after you die, you're not going to be able to go to God and plead for leniency and say, I want another shot, I want another chance. I didn't know this, I didn't know that. You could have done this, you could have done more to help me to be saved. It doesn't work that way. You can't have that. So listen now while you can. Ask if he's there. Humor me. Just ask him. Ask him to show you his reality. He will come to you and he will do it. So I don't know what else to tell you. I hope this is helpful.